All right, hey, what's up, everybody? This is Mike Whitmire. I'm the co-founder and CEO of FloQast. Welcome to our most recent episode of CPA to CFO, the podcast where we meet with CFOs from my network to understand how they moved up through the ranks and got to this position. For some context, before we introduce Jerry, I'm an accountant. I'm a CPA. I always wanted to be a CFO when I was moving up through the ranks, but in founding FloQast, I became a CEO and ultimately realized I did not have a good grasp of what CFOs actually do. So the purpose of this podcast is to help get you some real insight into what CFOs do and what accountants have done to position themselves throughout the courses of their careers to get that CFO position. So that's why we're here today, and I'm super excited to have Jerry Raphael, the newly appointed CFO of Stack Overflow, on the line with us today. Hey, Jerry, welcome. How you doing?
I'm good. Just trying to get through this whole COVID situation and social distancing, but doing good.
Yeah, for those of you watching or listening in the future, this is mid-COVID-19 pandemic. I think we had a record number of cases today. Baseball's been postponed. We got all kinds of bad stuff's going on right now, but hopefully we pull out of this in the not too distant future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we might as well touch on the remote topic a bit before we kick off into it, but how has the transition been for your team and for your company?
What's been really good is that Stack Overflow has always been a remote friendly company. And, for us, we've always had a good spirit for allowing folks to work remote. In fact, 1/3 of our organization works remote today. Mostly our product and engineering team, so about 100 or so stackers. What's really good about it is obviously you get to save somewhat on the office footprint, but The other thing is that a lot of our people, they like the flexibility of being able to work from home. But more importantly, as a company, Stack Overflow is able to get and retain some of the better talent that's out there in the marketplace. So when we hire on skills more than anything else versus, trying to find someone that's in a specific geographic region or office. But just to answer your question around how's it going so far being remote, at least for me, it's been pretty good. My team has been really productive. In fact, there's times where I almost have to tell them to hey, let's sign off at, 7:30, 8 o'clock. Let's not go past that, because some folks are having some issues with knowing when to turn it off, so to speak.
I think only a CFO who came up through the accounting ranks would have the empathy to ask their accounting team to stop working at a certain point. That's super nice of you.
Get burnt out, man. I want them to be engaged for the long haul. I don't want them to burn out too quickly.
Let's kick into how you developed that mentality, I think, and we'll start at the beginning of the career. So let's walk through it. How'd you get into this whole accounting thing?
So I took the traditional path. I went to St. John's. Majored in accounting.
So there we go. Yep.
Graduated from there and then, went through the campus program to find a job. Had multiple offers, couple Big Four in there, I think PwC and Deloitte. And I decided to work at Grant Thornton, despite actually quite a few people telling me I should have just gone the Big Four route. I just felt that Grant Thornton was the right size for me. And when I interviewed, I loved the partners and the types of clients that they had. So I kind of went that route.
And they paid overtime, right?
At the time, actually, it's a good point. At the time, they actually did pay overtime.
Smart decision.
But, on the flip side, I only had the overtime for one busy season. And then after that, they went back to the traditional model. Overtime. So that was kind of a bait and switch. But overall, I actually enjoyed my Grant Thornton career. I was there for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
The insurance practice, I was in the technology industry group, focusing, 100% on software. There wasn't a concept of SaaS at the time, 20 years ago. SaaS was just coming up with the Salesforces of the world. So it was mostly software, internet type companies, some life sciences, but mainly technology overall. So I did 7 years in audit.
But you were in technology. Did you also did you audit private companies and public companies or different stages as well?
Yeah, it was a mix. Because when you think about what was going on at that time, the rules were pretty standard across the board. Now the public company rules versus the private company rules. Right. There's really been a huge divergence, in the AICPA rules around accounting for the two cohorts there. But back then, the rules were virtually the same. You just had SEC reporting requirements, and Sarbanes-Oxley was just coming, together. When I was about 2 or 3 years in as a senior overall.
Okay. Makes sense.
But just as I was going through, my career at Grant Thornton, at a certain point, they came to me and they asked me, hey, do you want to be in the national office? We have various positions. And so I took a role in their professional standards group, focusing on SEC specific issues. So it's kind of, for those of you that don't know how some of the accounting firms kind of are situated, they have these groups or think tanks, so to speak, that specialize in sometimes a single FASB or a single accounting standard around, different topics. So I specialize specifically in SEC reporting. My thought pattern was, hey, if I could, become an expert in public company accounting, that could be a path to me becoming a CFO or even working at a public company in some kind of capacity. But as I kind of went through my career, I realized that some of those types of skills weren't as coveted anymore. And the role of a CFO had really changed from being, the down and dirty numbers crunchers, keep us compliant with all the, U.S. GAAP standards and the various international standards and the SEC stuff, to more of a strategic advisor. So I had to kind of build those skills as I moved along.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that stuff, but yeah, the role of the CFO has definitely changed in the last 20 years. Like I hit the workforce in 2006, and at the time it felt like a CFO was still expected to be the compliance buttoned up, here, CEO, here are your financial statements, go do what you will, to much broader than that. But okay, so your logic was, I want to work at a public company one day. Let's work in the SEC kind of guidance group at Grant Thornton, and then realized you didn't necessarily love that. So then, what was your next move from there?
I did about 2.5, 3 years in that group, and realized that wasn't for me. I realized I wasn't quite the bookworm that wanted to sit and do a bunch of research and then write, position papers for the firm, and then consult audit teams. I mean, some of it was cool, like sitting and reviewing, accountants' 10Ks wasn't my thing, though. So in any case, I went back into insurance practice, started doing audits again, and then realized it was like deja vu. It was almost like, Groundhog Day. I was doing the same thing over and over and over again, and I kind of had enough. And despite the fact that I had, been there for 10 years, I just wanted to make a move and kind of leave public accounting altogether. So I landed a really, really awesome role at WWE, which is just an awesome company, had a great CFO, really good controller at the time that I loved working with. I took a role in financial reporting, just given, the expertise that I'd gained at Grant Thornton doing SEC reporting. So
WWE was a public company, right?
WWE's been a public company for a long while. They've been public since about 2000. So when I joined, they were already public and listed on the NYSE.
There we go. Vince McMahon getting listed. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it's funny because a lot of times when I worked there and I'd be on some of the, the earnings calls, folks would ask, like, why are you public? Doesn't make any sense. And Vince would always say, hey, I love the beat of a public company because it makes you march a certain way because you have these clear deadlines around when you need to report your numbers. And, the street kind of keeps you honest around, if you say you're going to do X, you got to kind of follow through with it. And it makes a lot of sense. And we'll get to this in a minute. When I transitioned to like a non-public company, you definitely see that rhythm and that beat slow down a little bit in terms of
interesting
how it operates. So, I went, I moved on to WWE, great company, great product. Despite if you're a fan or you're not a fan, they put on a really dynamite, awesome show. And
I don't know if you saw, but they're currently deemed essential activities in Florida.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
There you go.
I'm not surprised. They're still staging shows and still doing what they do best. And hopefully they're smart and they do it in the safest way possible. That's the only thing I could say about that. I moved on within 3 years. I think I was there for about 3 years. And I left to take my first controller role at a company called Vibrant Media. And one of the reasons why I took that role was because they were in the middle of going public.
Oh, cool.
And they had an S1 document and they needed someone that kind of had a background in SEC reporting that also had a strong, US GAAP understanding because the US was their biggest, market. So I moved on to there, was moving forward with everything, and then the downturn in the economy happened. This was about 2008, 2009 timeframe, and they had to pull their S1.
Bummer.
And so after me being there for about 6 months, they did about a 30%, layoff. And then we went into absolute crisis mode where I was managing cash and like literally calling up customers and begging them to pay and all of this types of crazy stuff. So I ended up staying there for about a year and a half and ended up leaving, after that and landing the job at Stack Overflow, which has been interesting.
All right, so you saw that downturn. I like talking about that stuff, but I don't want to drum up old negative feelings anyway. But I did want to, going back to WWE, you had mentioned that you really liked, there was a great CFO and that you really liked the controller as well. Any things in particular that you think you learned from them that helped you on your journey to CFO?
Yeah, I would say so. One thing that the CFO always said, and I continue to keep saying this to my team, is that if you're not keeping score, your head is not in the game. Yeah. And what that means is, you need to understand the building blocks that make up your accounting team, and not even get into the business aspects, but how many journal entries does it take to close the books? Do you have the right ratio of people doing the work that you need to do? How many checks do you write every month? How do you gauge if you have the right number of people doing the right tasks at the right time? And, how do you improve on that? How do you keep track of the number of days that it takes to close? And are you trying to actively improve that number? I mean, these are just some of the things that he would always challenge us to always think about. Hey, keep your head in the game. Are you always, thinking about ways to kind of improve the process, get better, get leaner, do things better, faster, smarter? And so I took a lot of those principles with me as I kind of moved, through the ranks and left WWE. I've always kept that in my mind as like, hey, are we keeping score? Is our head in the game? Are we always trying to improve the process? And I mean, obviously there's other things that, he would always talk about people, process, technology as something that is extremely critical to running a good accounting and finance organization, especially when you're a public company. You have to have certain procedures in place to make sure your numbers are good and, you're giving good guidance and you're publishing financial statements that are accurate, complete, and all those things. But just peeling back the onion and understanding how everything kind of weaves together, I have to say that at WWE, that's where I learned 99% of that in the real world, real time, which was why I say the CFO and the controller there would just always about how can you improve, how can you do better. And interestingly enough, that's actually how I got introduced to the world of close management software when I was at WWE. They were using Blackline. I don't know if they still use it now, but I think at that time it was the only product available on the market. Yep. And so, they were using it again as a way to manage their close and keep track of certain things. And so now it's interesting when Mike and I joined, Mike and I met each other years later. I was actively looking for Blackline in the marketplace, and I found FloQast, and I was like, wow, this product is so much more intuitive. And so
well, thank you.
It was almost like a no-brainer when we first met and you demoed the product for us.
Yeah. Well, it's super. Well, I appreciate the kind words. And that's fascinating that WWE was like so tech forward and innovative and just always looking to improve. I don't think, if you ask someone to just think, hey, what do you think WWE's accounting department is like? They probably wouldn't have that take on it. But that's, I guess, part of why it's such a successful company and has done so well. Yeah.
Well, a big part of it is that there's probably, and I don't remember the exact number, but WWE is probably about 15 businesses in one. They're a live events company. They produce probably 25 or 6 hours of content every week. It's probably about 10 different television shows. They have a merchandising business. They have a licensing business. They're a traveling sports and entertainment. I mean, they make movies.
Video games. I remember playing their video games.
Yeah, it just goes on and on. So being able to account for all the individual pieces of the business. When I was there, I think the revenue was in the realm of about 500 or 600 million. by the time I left, they were approaching over $1 billion in revenue. And
Wow.
so, to be able to do that on that scale for a niche business is amazing. I mean, $1 billion in revenue, when you compare them to like, say, other sports entertainment companies, they really are a titan when you think about it.
Yeah. That's super, super impressive. All right, well, I'd love to hear about your time at Stack, because you've had quite the run there. So first of all, it'd be good to set some context, like what does Stack do, a little bit more about the business, and then I would love to just hear about your run, because you've had quite the nice run here at Stack Overflow.
Yeah, Stack Overflow is a website for software developers. We're most known for our public-facing Q&A platform, where software developers kind of come together to solve problems around the coding and programming space. We have 3 products. The first being a talent product, where we bring together employers and those developers that are looking for jobs. We have a job board. And then we have an advertising product, and our most fastest growing business is our developer collaboration tool that we call Teams, which has been doing really, really well and in this remote space, that developers kind of use that and within a company, internally facing, to get together and artifact knowledge and share ideas around coding and answer each other's questions. So really awesome product offering that interestingly enough, during the downturn in the economy, you start to see certain businesses kind of increase, and while some others might be affected more and not as durable in terms of the revenue stream.
And how is it impacting Stack?
Yeah, so right now with the COVID situation, we see a decline in mainly the talent side of the business, mainly because people have kind of pulled back from hiring, evaluating budgets to figure out how long this may last. The advertising space, interestingly enough, you would think that folks will pull back, but they've just changed the messaging, and in some cases have doubled down on some of the campaigns and some of the things that they're doing. So, and then the developer collaboration tool has been doing really well. I mean, for Q1 we were about 35% above plan. Wow. And, over the last 3 years, we've averaged probably 150% growth in terms of top line. It is a SaaS product, so you look at our renewal rates. Our renewal rates have been about, from a gross basis, in the high 90s, so 97, 98%. On a net basis, nice. Over 135% net renewal in terms of dollars. So it is
really,
absolutely. It's been a SaaS product.
Yeah, for those listening who are not huge SaaS nerds, those are some stellar numbers that Jerry just threw out there. That's like a high valuation public company software thing right there. Wow, keep that up.
Yeah, it's been doing well, and we continue to keep closing larger and larger deals. Like, right now we have a deal on the table for over $6 million paid up front. It's a 3-year deal with a large financial institution. So fingers crossed. Hopefully, we close that in the next couple weeks and continue to look up for that product line.
That's really cool. So you started, because I love that all of a sudden now we're talking about like pipeline and metrics and all this kind of stuff, which is where you ultimately get to as a CFO. But when you joined, you were the controller. Am I right?
Yeah, I started out as the controller. I mean, when I joined, it was about, Stack Overflow had about 25 million in revenue or so. This year we should do about 92, 93 million in top line GAAP revenue. So the growth has been tremendous. I've been with the company for about 5 years. When I first joined, we were on QuickBooks. The accounting team was literally one person, and then we had some outside firm doing some of the other little some of the things. And so so you look at the team today, and we have 9 people on the team, and a couple work remote. We have one in Vancouver. We have another person in Spain. We have an office in London, office in Munich, Germany. We just opened an office in Austin, Texas. So it's the company has grown. We have more product offerings. The accounting team has grown tremendously, and the company has just done really, really, really well. And my role has obviously changed, over time. So it's really been a great opportunity for me in terms of my learning. Like I said, I joined as the company's controller. And then, as things started to develop in terms of the company's evolution, I started to take on more and more. And again, my goal was always to become CFO at some point in my career. So when folks came to me and said, hey, Jerry, do you mind, taking on the responsibility of, real estate leases and some of the office operations? And I was like, sure, I would do that. And then when one of our leaders left the business and we didn't have a head of HR, and they said, hey, would you take on the HR team? I said, absolutely. And again, slowly but surely, you start to get to a point where, I was running the accounting, the finance, the legal team, HR, and office operations. So it was, I had a team. Today, I have a team of about 50 people, cross-functional in terms of when you look at the back office, that really support a lot of the functional areas of the company, which is really cool. You go from accounting and you kind of understand. And, for me, one of the things that I notice and I start to kind of piece together is that, at the end of the day, it takes me back to the days of WWE, of people, process, technology. How do you do things? Breaking them down, keeping track of your metrics and your process and understanding all the pieces and how they fit together. And while you might not be able to apply accounting knowledge to something, what I've found is you can always break them down into their components and apply procedures or, what you've learned from doing your tasks in a very procedural type way. And, I run sales ops and revenue operations as well. And, that's from, enabling our sales team to be able to put through an order and metrics around anything related to sales. But again, it's process and it's reporting. Yeah. Very, very, very similar to what you would see in accounting. Obviously, the lingo is different. The way you talk about it is different. But at the end of the day, you're compiling information, you're reporting on information, you're trying to optimize a specific workflow and use technology to be able to do that better, faster, and more efficiently.
So because that kind of background in workflow process, getting everything really optimized, then for you, it's a matter of sitting down with like a sales leader and understanding what they need. And then you can help develop the best, most optimal workflow for doing any given task, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's the key, is just applying a lot of the things that we learn as being accountants to other practical functional areas within the company to provide value and be a trusted advisor. That's the way I kind of look at it.
Yeah. And you always follow the money. So it makes a ton of sense for an accountant to be doing a lot to be doing all of it from my perspective. Nice. And I can just say from my angle, Jerry and I met, I think it would have been 4 years ago at this point, brought you on board. And you were a controller. And every time we catch up, it seemed like there was some new function had got thrown on you. Like, I'll take HR, I'll take office admin, blah, blah, blah. And then, you just kept saying yes and yes and yes. And then 4 years later, you pop your head up and you got the ask. You want to just tell the story of how you got the formal title here?
It's funny, now that I got promoted, a lot of people came to me and was like, hey, how did you get the promotion? Like, what did you do? And I don't have a good answer. What I can tell you is I did my best to help the business in any way possible. So any area outside accounting folks asked me to kind of jump in and pitch in on, I was always like, sure, I got you. Let's get this done. No egos. Let's just do what's right for the business. And I basically put my head down and worked as hard as I could. And then folks noticed. And from there, they came to me and they told me, and it was like great. And I was extremely excited, extremely happy, and extremely humbled at the opportunity to be CFO for a company that's doing so many good things in the tech space today.
I mean, I think that's key to a lot of things, is saying yes and wanting to take it on and not do it for the praise, but knowing, hey, that is a CFO responsibility. So I might as well start doing it now and increase my probability down the road. And then also I just know, because Stack you guys are venture backed, you have very legit investors behind you. And the timing of all of it, I thought was a serious kind of nod of confidence to you. The new investors came in, new CEO came in, and they worked with you for a period of time and were like, yep, Jerry's the guy. We don't want to go interview people. And they gave you the role. There's something that's, to me, when I look at it from kind of the outside looking in, that's just like a really good, it's a pretty great situation. They recognize that you were great. The CEO personally recommended you, and they said, "Yeah, I know we have new investors. We don't have a CFO. Let's not hire a CFO. Let's move Jerry into that position." Yeah,
no, it was humbling just to be able to get that opportunity. Like I said.
Yeah, very cool. Nice. Well, this has been super informative. If you were to talk to Jerry 20 years ago and give yourself some advice, what would you tell Jerry about to start his first day at Grant Thornton?
That's a tough question. I think the most important thing that if I went back and looked at it is I probably wouldn't have stayed in public accounting as long as I did. I thought that at the time, what was most important was getting that hardcore technical expertise. Now, you do need a certain base of accounting and understanding and things like that, but there's no substitute for being on the ground at an actual company. And then the other thing is, when you choose a company to work for, make sure you're passionate about the product, what they do, and you want it, because that'll make you want to get involved in the other aspects of the company. So,
right, yeah.
And that's your key to kind of moving up in your career as a CFO, is really wanting to get into how does sales work? How's the sales team set up? What are the things that motivate salespeople to want to sell more? And then understanding that, like, a lot of times as accountants, we spend a lot of time in the past. March 31st, right? So some of you that maybe not have a great close process, you're still trying to close March. And we're 3 weeks into April. Well, CFOs are thinking about what's happening 2-3 months from now. And you use the data from the past to kind of try to predict the future. But you're always trying to be 2, 3, 4 months ahead, if not 6 months to a year or 3 years ahead of what's actually going on. Yeah. So the more you can start to get your mind around, how do I predict the future? How do I understand outcomes? And how do I use data to predict more accurate outcomes later down the line, is the more you'll be able to start to get into those other roles that give more and more insight to the leaders of the company that are trying to run the business.
So how many years would you, if you had to go back and do it, would you have done like 2, 3, 4 years in public? What do you think the right number is?
It's fine. I was thinking about this the other day, and I remember about 2 or 3 years in, right when Sarbanes-Oxley had kind of come into play, there were so many of my friends that were gone. They were like, hey, I got 20% more, 30% more, 50% more in salary to leave. And I was like, these guys haven't learned enough yet. They need to, they're kind of half-baked. They're not going to be successful and stuff. So I ended up staying. I would say 5 years is a good mark. Unless you want to be a partner and you want your career to be in public accounting, there's nothing wrong with that. Then I would say stay for longer. But I would say about 5 years. So about when you reach that manager mark, I would say that's about enough to have a good base and understanding enough about accounting, enough about industry, because you don't want to stay in a position too long and not show progress and kind of learn a new skill. And, as I started to move around in my career, I'm starting to figure out, well, how can I learn something new? How can I do something a little bit different? And if you're not killing it at work, you know what I mean? If you're not really putting in the time and working really hard and trying to develop your skills around accounting, then you should be focused on doing that outside of work, whether that's, attending trainings, going out there and networking and doing your best to improve yourself and your overall image and your brand in the marketplace, so that when those opportunities come up, they're there for you.
Yeah. Makes sense. And I think 5 years is you're a doer. You learn how to do the audit job, which means you learn a decent amount about accounting. You get to manage a couple, you're then a senior, you have people reporting to you. Then when you hit manager, that's where all of a sudden you're in like the conversations with the CFO at the client as well. So you get more exposure to the executive level conversations, which this is me thinking on the fly now, but that probably is the fastest way to just all of a sudden find yourself in like executive level conversations, is to stay in audit. Because the alternative is, let's say you leave after 2 years, you go and you become a senior accountant somewhere, then 3 years later, you'll be an accounting manager. You probably won't be in conversations with the CFO.
Right.
So you just won't get experience with that. So, okay. I think I've 5 years. I think that's the right number. Yeah. You do 5 and then get out and go get some experience. And then, that's how you develop like gut and intuition and learn how businesses run and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, this has been really interesting to me. Was there anything else you wanted to sign off to the audience with? If not, we can wrap it up.
No, I think that was it.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jerry. Really appreciate you taking the time. And again, Jerry Raphael, CFO of Stack Overflow. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.